Ernice, were you going to start us off, or do you want me to just go ahead and get started?
Yeah, I'm going to start you off.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 2021 Jumpstart Virtual Convention. This is the first session. Our presenter this afternoon is Susie Shawan from the Louisiana Workforce Commission. She's the Director of Workforce Initiatives, LED Fast Start. Susie, I will turn it over to you. If you have questions for Susie, you can put them in the chat, send to all panelists, and we will be able to see them. Susie, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ernice, and you can move us to the next slide. I want to just tell everybody really quickly who I am and what it is that I'm here to do in general and to talk about with you today. I am Susie Shawan. My name is Susanna, as you can tell, but I do go by Susie. And I'm with LED Fast Start, which is the Workforce Development Division of Louisiana Economic Development. And Ernice, don't worry about this, but I am actually not with the Louisiana Workforce Commission, although I do work very closely with them. And that is actually my first bullet on this slide, that our role as LED Fast Start is really to help build a lot of partnerships and connective tissue between the state agencies that impact workforce development from an economic development perspective. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. So we work very closely with the Louisiana Workforce Commission. We work very closely with the workforce development boards around the state, with the Department of Education, obviously that's why we're here today, with higher education, with our regional economic development organizations who are giving complimentary presentations right now. I'm speaking from the statewide perspective, but they're the ones that offer our regional perspective, and other community partners. So we really want to look at how we can add value to making sure that we are aligning workforce development and the resources associated with different funding streams so that we are fueling economic growth in the state. And there's a few different ways that we do this, but if we can move to the next slide, I'm going to talk about the big picture. If we can move to the next slide. Thank you. So those of you that may have seen me present before have seen this slide before. I include it in literally every presentation that I give because it really does illustrate, I think, very effectively the connection between economic development, workforce development, and thriving communities, which is really where we want to get, where every person in Louisiana has access to the kind of personal growth, rewarding employment, and resilient outcomes that we hope to have for all of our citizens. All of that starts with making sure that we look at which types of jobs and which types of industries fuel economic growth, that is, create more wealth in the economy than existed before. Those are economic driver employers, and the jobs that they need in order to grow to their largest potential, to their maximum potential, we are calling economic driver jobs here. We need to be able to provide enough people to fill those jobs in order to create the positive cycle of growth that defines a thriving and resilient economy. Those skilled workers we're going to talk about in a little bit, but they tend to be highly STEM intensive jobs. They tend to require a fair amount of preparation, but not all of them require preparation at a four-year college or university. Many of them do, but many of them require the kind of preparation that can be achieved at a two-year technical or community college, and some of them are accessible to people directly outside of high school. So we want to make sure that we're providing enough workers in those fields to fuel economic growth. And then we see the positive effects of that, where we see a growth in population, and that drives growth in fields like education and healthcare. But it also means that there's more personal wealth and more state and local revenue growth to fuel better pay, better access to jobs within those fields as well. And then we also see the growth in professional and cultural jobs and so on, we start to see opportunities open up in things like museums and music and so forth, where a lot of our students in fields that are not so STEM intensive and more creative, the arts and humanities, are able to find jobs in the fields that they love so much, and that they are not required to leave the state in order to get the kind of employment that they want. And then we see a growth and reinvestment of revenues, and we see this cycle continue. But to get there, we need to have enough people in this orange arrow, and that's really where the magic happens when we're talking both about economic growth and poverty reduction. Next slide, please. In order to get here, we have to start with the end in sight. So we need to be looking at what our employers need and what our economy needs, and also what our aspirations are. Who do we want to be as a state? What do we want our economy to look like? But also, who do we want to have access to those jobs? Equity comes into play here as well, very significantly. A traditional approach where students choose their own pathways without a lot of guidance, the kind of follow what you love, do what you dream, that sort of approach, unfortunately, does not always result in the best outcomes for our young people. We need to understand where they're going so that we can make sure that we get them where they need to be. Next slide, please. So what we do every year at LED Fast Start is an analysis of our economy, and that has proved unduly challenging this year, and I'm sure you all can understand exactly why that might be. But what we are discovering is that the story pre-COVID is really not that different from the story that we're encountering right now. But I'll talk a little bit about what we're seeing in terms of changes and accelerating shifts in our economy. First of all, overall, what we need in Louisiana is more workers in manufacturing and IT. Those are the classic economic driver industries, and they are the industries where we really are seeing significant undersupplies in terms of skills. I think everybody that's listening to me right now probably knows that that's intuitively true. There are some differences regionally within the state. Manufacturing in North Louisiana looks a little bit different than manufacturing in South Louisiana. But the truth remains that there are excellent opportunities for people in manufacturing and IT throughout the state. And there are significant needs in healthcare. And this, of course, is something that we're seeing accelerate right now. And I want to draw specific attention to rural disparities, and some underserved urban areas are also experiencing significant undersupply of qualified healthcare people. The opportunities at the 2-year higher education level are short-term certifications, and bear in mind that many of these are accessible to high school students, and I know that many of you are building pathways for your students to get them certifications like this. And we're very excited about the opportunity of Fast Forward to bring us to the associate degree level as well in these fields. So again, this is very relevant to your populations. Short-term certifications to associate degrees in construction crafts and manufacturing, production and maintenance. And I want to emphasize some IT fields are accessible here as well. And then at the 4-year level, bachelor's degrees in computer science and engineering, accounting, and data science. Data analytics is becoming increasingly important. And things with cloud computing and AI and so on all fit in here. And then certainly a number of healthcare fields. This is pre-COVID, but it probably doesn't sound that different to all of you than what is really in demand right now in our economy. But let's look a little more specifically at that. Next slide, please. So if we look at the sector impacts here, we can see that hospitality and tourism, we know those are industries that are really struggling. We know that energy jobs are shifting. We are really seeing some opportunities in Louisiana right now in terms of carbon capture and carbon storage. We are really uniquely well positioned to do a lot of work there. And so we need to keep an eye on the very intense flux in the energy jobs market right now and make sure that we're able to help our people succeed within those sectors. Manufacturing and construction are hiring in many regions and in many sectors. We have an enormous amount of construction work to be done in the southwest part of our state, unfortunately, because of the hurricane impacts that we've seen. The chemical industry has been an absolute workhorse for us over the past few months of real flux in all of our lives and so on. And so they've really helped keep jobs available in a number of our regions in the state. We are expecting to see some potential impacts in manufacturing in terms of reshoring of some manufacturing jobs returning to the states. We also are expecting to see some shifts in manufacturing that we had anticipated for further in the future. And in many sectors, the impact of the pandemic and the impact on the energy sector are actually accelerating a lot of trends that we knew were coming, but they're coming a little bit more rapidly now. I didn't mention retail in my first bullet, and that's because retail hasn't really gone away. It's just really shifted to transportation, logistics, and supply chain. That's where retail is right now. There was already a lot of demand there. Now we're seeing even more of that. IT, we know, has really thrived. It's been an extraordinarily resilient industry for us. And then sectors of the healthcare market are deeply, deeply undersupplied right now, while others are expected to recover quickly and allow those jobs to rebound. New economy jobs are arriving quickly, and I want to talk about those a little bit. If we look at all the growth jobs here, we're looking at energy, we're looking at manufacturing, construction, IT, logistics, healthcare. All of those are STEM fields. All of those require technology literacy and technology preparation. That is critically important for your students because we need to make sure that they are able to compete in the new economy. Next slide, please. So what I've included here are some details from the greater New Orleans area. I just really like the way that they put this data together. I think it's very informative. And I should also say there's nothing here that I see that really isn't applicable throughout the state. So we can see again that our growth occupations are really in fields like healthcare, in transportation and logistics, and fields like that. We can see we're seeing growing occupations, again, in many of those sectors that we just discussed. And we also are seeing impacts, again, shrinking jobs in the categories on the right. Next slide. And again, we can see there are some resilient hard skills and some resilient certifications and licenses and so on that again correspond pretty well to what we were just talking about. Next slide. So I want to talk for just a minute about the new economy, about what we're really seeing. When we talk to employers, and this goes across the board, across sectors, employers tell us that things are changing. And the way that they're changing is that they are becoming more change rich, right? We're seeing lots and lots of change in the environments in which people need to work. People can no longer do the same job from the time they're 22 to the time that they're 75. It just doesn't work that way anymore. So really, this is about resilience. It's about people being able to thrive in these very highly dynamic environments and do their own kind of lifelong learning that's very, very self-motivated, very self-driven. But in order to get in the door and be at the point where the lifelong learning takes hold, they need to have certain foundational competencies. They need to have a very good grounding in today's technical skills. And this is really not just for formally technical jobs. Every job is a technology job at this point. People need foundational technical skills to function in the marketplace and to be able to get into that first job. Again, I think people know this intuitively, but I really want to emphasize it. They need to be able to acquire the technical skills of tomorrow in their own independent way. This is no longer a situation where employers are necessarily going to put in front of people, I need you to take these sorts of certification programs as you advance through my company. It's going to be something that people are going to need to drive themselves towards in terms of acquiring technical skills. Just like I said, every job is a technology job. It is similarly true that there are no more purely technology jobs. All the people doing technology jobs need the non-technical skills as well. That's about thriving in the highly dynamic environment, but it also involves interpersonal skills. Everybody needs to be able to do that. We hear more and more frequently from our employers about the need for a strong ethical orientation. They need to be able to trust their employees to handle customer data, for example, to handle access to networks and so forth with a strong ethical orientation. And we also hear more and more of our employers express their personal and their corporate commitment to equity, not only in opportunity, but also in outcome. So this is something, again, that we're hearing more and more. Next slide, please. So just as a cool little wrap up here, I also wanted to give you all a little bit of visibility into what a lot of our colleges and universities are talking about in terms of a transformative redesign needed to meet the future where it's coming to us right now. So how do we move our higher education system into the kind of dynamic environment that teaches people how to function in that way? The most important thing I think here to talk about is skills across the curriculum. As I was saying on the previous slide, all jobs are technology jobs and no jobs are purely technology jobs. Everybody needs interpersonal skills. Everybody needs the technology foundation. That needs to happen no matter what you're majoring in. And it requires interdisciplinary groups to work together across the academic silos to break down the walls and get everybody together. A truly robust level of industry engagement is needed as well, so that industry is really enmeshed with higher education and helping to inform what they do. And then competency-based learning. Functional competencies can be described as the technical competencies, personal competencies, and the ethical and equitable competencies that we talked about on the previous page. I want to put all of this out there because you contribute here too. We need your thought leadership. All of you are professional educators and have really good ideas, and we need to solicit those. And I want to put myself out as somebody who is happy to receive those good ideas, even if it's just something off the top of your head. I'm your gal, reach out at any point. And we have to remember, this is very overwhelming for all of us, but learning is about fun. It's about play. That is how people learn. And I don't want to leave that behind. So with that, Ernice, I'm wrapping up. And please, if you would be willing to facilitate the questions, that would be wonderful.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing. That was very informative. And at this time, there are actually no questions in the chat or in the Q&A panel. However, if there are questions, please feel free to type them in and we will get them answered.
Wonderful. And again, as I was just saying, I do want to stress that I'm happy to be contacted. My information is right here. And if people have bright ideas, there's nobody like the people on the ground working directly with our students to really help us understand where we can be better and where we can help them find their pathways in the best way. Well, I'm just going to go ahead and put myself on mute, but I'm happy to hang out till the end of the session. And if somebody has a question, just feel free to toss it out. And Clint, I'd also like to thank you for your excellent work interpreting. It's important stuff and we appreciate you.
So we do have one comment that says, thank you, Susie, and great to hear the statewide view. It's from Teresa Semino. I believe we could go ahead and end here. I do see people exiting. I guess they are going to their next session. I want to thank you, Susie, for sharing that information. It was very informative, and I'm quite sure people found it useful to know the statewide view of what is happening with jobs as well as the economics going on in the state. The presentations from this afternoon will be posted to the All Things Jumpstart website later on this afternoon, as well as recordings will be posted to the department's YouTube channel in the coming days. So if you have any questions, we do have Susie's information on the screen right here. And if you have further questions for anything related to Jumpstart, please contact jumpstart@la.gov. Thank you all, and we look forward to seeing you in your next session.
Thanks, Sir Denise.
Thank you.